The daily confrontation with fear has become a real practice for me since about three years ago. I went skydiving in Dubai, right? And skydiving is a really interesting confront with fear, right? So what happens is you go out the night before and you take a drink with your friends and somebody says, yeah, we should go skydiving tomorrow. And you go, yeah, we'll go skydiving tomorrow. Yeah, yeah. And you go, yeah. And everybody goes, yeah, right? And you go home and you by yourself, you're like, right? You're like, well, I mean, they was drunk too, right? So maybe they not, maybe, I mean, we don't have to go. We don't have to do it. So then that night you're laying in your bed and you just keep, and you're terrified. You keep imagining over and over again jumping out of an airplane and you can't figure out why you would do that, right? And you're laying there and you have the worst night's sleep of your life, but you still have the hope that your friends were drunk, right? So you wake up the next day and you go, down and you say where you were going to meet and everybody's there. All right, cool, right? So you get in the van and you don't know that your friends had the same night that you had because they're pretending like they didn't. They're like, yeah, man, my uncle's a Navy SEAL and this is going to be great. I've been looking forward to this. And you're like, oh my God. And your stomach is terrible. You can't eat and everything, but you don't want to be the only punk who doesn't jump out of this airplane. So you get there, and then you have this safety brief. And you're standing there, and the guys will tell you, well, if the chute doesn't open, what's going to happen is why the hell, what could happen? That the chute wouldn't open, right? So you do a thing, and what you do is your first jump, you're attached to a guy who is going, he's going to walk you out. So you go, and you get there, and there's an airplane, and nobody's stopping. Everybody's still going. So you get onto the airplane and you're sitting there and it's extra because you're sitting on some dude's lap, some stranger. You're sitting on his lap and it's like, you trying to make small talk. Yeah, man. So you be jumping with people all the time, huh? Right? So, and then you just want to make sure, you got kids, right? You got people you need to see, right? You just want to make sure he's serious, right? So you get in there. So everything's normal. So you fly and you go up to 14,000 feet. And you notice there's a light. It's red and it's yellow and green, right? So right now the light's red. So then you start thinking at some point the light's going to go green, but you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you wait and it goes yellow. And the light goes green, and somebody opens the door, and in that moment, you realize you've never been in a freaking airplane with the door open. Right? So terror, right? So you go, and then, if you were smart, you sat in the back, so you don't go first, right? And then people start going out of the airplane. And you go, and the guy walks you up to the end of the thing, and you're standing and your toes are on the edge and you're looking out down to death. And they say on 3 and they say 1, 2, and he pushes you on 2 because people grab on 3, right? Right? And you go and you fall out of the airplane, and in 1 second you realize that it's the most blissful experience of your life. You're flying, right? It doesn't feel like falling, right? It's like you actually are kind of held a little bit by the wind, and then you start falling, and there's zero fear. You realize that the point of maximum danger is the point of minimum fear. It's bliss. It's bliss, and you're flying, right? And you're doing that, and then 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 40 seconds, and you have enough time to just kind of be like, oh, shit, that's that building. I like that one. Oh, you can see the ocean. Right? You start doing all of that, and the lesson for me was, why were you scared in your bed the night before? What do you need that fear for? Just don't go. Why are you scared in your bed 16 hours before you jump? Why are you scared in the car? Why could you not enjoy breakfast? What did you need that? The fear is fear of what? You're nowhere even near the airplane. Everything up to the stepping out, there's actually no reason to be scared. It only just ruins your day. You don't have to jump. And then in that moment, all of a sudden, where you should be terrified is the most blissful experience of your life. And God placed the best things in life on the other side of terror.
The fear is simply because you're not living with life, you're living in your mind. Your fear is always about what's going to happen next. That means your fear is always about that which does not exist. If your fear is about the non-existent, your fear is 100% imaginary. If you're suffering the non-existential, we call that insanity. So, people may be in just socially accepted levels of insanity, but if you're afraid or if you're suffering anything which does not exist, it amounts to insanity, isn't it? People are always suffering either what happened yesterday or what may happen tomorrow. So your suffering is always about that which does not exist, simply because you're not rooted in reality. You're always rooted in your mind. Mind is… one part of it is memory, another part of it is imagination. Both of them are in one way imagination, because both of them don't exist right now. You're lost in your imagination, that's the basis of your fear.
It's like the difference between what makes the rich get richer and the poor get poor, right? And the difference we all know is mindset, but like how's that built? So this is what I did, I created 4 little boxes and I'll scribble it here for you. You think about the first thing that determines whether you can do something or not, and I put that in this first box at the top here on the left side, it's potential. Like what's the potential of a human being? Like when you guys started, you proved something no one had done in history. You ran the 4-minute mile, right? For golly knows how many centuries, they're trying to run a 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister does it. How did he do it? Do you remember? Roger Bannister didn't just go physically practice. He made a shift in his head. He practiced in his head because he could never achieve it physically, so he had to change in his head first so that the result became certain enough, he believed it, and then his body got him through. After Roger Bannister ran that 4-minute mile, within 2 years, 37 people ran a 4-minute mile. Now here's how it works. The potential for anybody getting your product is extraordinary. They can do what you've done as much, more or less. They can do whatever they want to do. The potential's there. The market's proven that. Whether or not they tap into that potential has a lot to do with what action they take, which is the question you came to me with, right? Like, you know, God, they all have potential, but they're not taking action. And we all know that the action they take is going to determine the results they get. That's pretty obvious. So most people have a belief about what their real potential is no matter what you tell them. And that affects how much action they take. And of course that affects the result, and then ironically, that result reinforces their belief. And then that belief affects it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a person has unlimited potential, we all agree. But they take little action, little results. Why? Because they have to start with a problem with their belief. They don't believe it's really gonna happen for me. But what happens is, if you believe that there's very little potential, how much action are you gonna take? Nothing, little. And when you take little potential with a little action, what kind of results do you get? Lousy little results. And when you get little results, what does that do to your belief? You go, see, I told you this was a waste of time, told you this wouldn't work. And then what happens? You tap even less potential, you take even less action, you get even worse results, and your belief gets even weaker. And this sucker feeds on itself until you are in a downward spiral. It's poisonous and it's self-fulfilling. Now, what if something could happen that could come along and fill you with a sense of absolute certainty, not like I believe, but mean where you know. In you guys' case, mine as well, we knew because we had to, because we burned the boats. There was no other option. We had to find a way. We weren't going to live that way. We all did it in different ways and for different reasons, but in essence, that was it. If you get yourself in a state of certainty that this is going to work, I'm going to find the way, and if this doesn't work, I will make the way, then you tap a lot more potential. And when you're certain in your potential, you take massive action. When you take massive action, you really believe in something, you get great results. When you get great results, your brain goes, see, I told you I was a stud. I told you this thing would work out. Now you're even stronger, you tap more potential, take greater action, greater results. So the core difference in people is how do you produce certainty when the world isn't giving it to you? We didn't change our potential, that was there. And it wasn't even taking more action. Taking more action with a belief it's not gonna work, it's not gonna change anything. we got results in our head that made us feel certain as if it had already happened. They did studies, many have been done at this element, where they want to say, how much does the mind affect performance? So take basketball. I've worked with a lot of NBA players and turned them around, and one of the problems many of them have is they'll choke on the free throw line. Well, everybody knows in that case, if you normally shoot really well and now you're not, something's interfering, something's getting in front of your state, some uncertainty, right? Obviously. So they take a group and say, we're going to make them better. How do you make somebody better who's got this mental block? So they take a group of guys and they're going to do free throws, and they do one group where they just practice for 6 weeks. Totally intense practice, and I forget the number of free throws, but they got to do this many free throws every day. Take a second group and they have them not practice at all. Obvious. And they take a third group and they don't let them touch a basketball. All they do is have them practice in their mind, but the key is, it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect, as corny as that sounds. So these guys see themselves making the shot every single time, conditioning their mind and body that it's perfect every time. They're not interrupted by a reality that would screw with them. So at the end of 6 weeks, they tally it up, and now they give them a test to see who has the highest free throw percentage, success. What do you guess it's going to be? Well, the obvious person says, obviously, it's not the guys that didn't practice. But which one is it? The mind, or is it the ones that actually practice? You intuitively know the truth, that practicing's not enough. It's getting yourself so certain so many times that now when you go to do it, there's no hesitancy and you execute. It's having that absolute certainty that makes you tap your full potential, take massive action, get massive results, be reinforced having stronger belief. This is what makes somebody a star.
How do you eliminate fear from your life? And I don't think you ever do. I think you become courageous. You see, courageous people are not people without fear. Courageous people are people that face the things they fear. There's no courage without fear. Whenever you go to do something that you've never done before, fear is going to step in. Now, some people are afraid of flying. People are afraid of different things that can make them very, very uncomfortable. If they don't get over that fear, well, I was afraid of flying. One day I was flying somewhere, and I wasn't very comfortable. I was sitting on the plane. There was a guy sitting beside me. He was very laid back, reading one leg up over the other, reading his newspaper. And we hit some rough weather. I'm going to tell you, it got turbulent. That plane was bouncing all over the place. This guy's there holding his paper, and he never skipped a breath. I was gripping onto the seats, and he just kept reading. When the flight finally smoothed out, I looked over at him, and I hadn't even spoken to him up until that point, and I said, "Pardon me, how come you weren't scared back there?" He smiled and he said, "Well," he said, "I fly these things. In fact, I train people to fly these things." I said, I can't understand why this plane doesn't fall right out of the sky. I mean, why it doesn't go straight down. He started to laugh and he said, "You can fly a rock if you've got enough thrust behind it." When he said that, I could see myself throwing a rock, and the rock was flying. You never think of a rock flying when you throw it, but the rock was flying. As long as there's thrust, the rock will fly. Then I got to thinking, there's millions of pounds of thrust in these big engines. And you know something? I've never been uncomfortable since. If we're afraid of something, it's because we don't understand it. Fear is caused by ignorance, the unknown. But when you understand it, fear leaves. Go study the principle of flight. See how the air is wrapped around the wings. It's wrapped around the wings. It holds the plane up there. Don't permit fear to control your life. Absolutely refuse to. Someone said, fear knocked on the door, faith opened it, and there was no one there. You see, you eliminate fear through intelligent action. Face the thing you fear, and fear will leave you. I won't permit fear to control my life, not even for 5 minutes. I used to let fear control me all the time, almost all the time. Fear is caused by the unknown. If there's something you're afraid of, go study it, understand it. Talk to someone who's a professional in that particular area. But for goodness sake, don't let it control your life anymore. Think of the people that are afraid to go into their own business. They're afraid to move to the place they'd really like to go. They're afraid to ask the girl or the guy for a date. What are they doing? Their life is drying up, it's shrinking. We're only here for a short time. Make it a good time. Get rid of the fear. Face it. Spot Proctor.